Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. There was an active shooter at a mall on Black Friday. None of it surprises me. Well, I watched the thing on the news last night about people getting into fist fights at Target over Black Friday sales. It was like I guess at my one of my local, we have three Targets. We don't have a super Target, but we have just regular Targets stores. And at one of them, I guess there was a giant like fist fight at the checkout registers or something in the electronics department. Good morning, Francie. I hope you are doing well this morning. Glad you could be here with us. Still scary, even if they know each other. Still traumatic if you're there. Not a day goes by that I walk into my local Kroger store and I don't think about the shooting that happened there. He didn't know that the employee that he shot and killed, and they deleted the entire aisle number for where it happened. So the aisles now go 13, 15. So aisle 14 is completely gone. They deleted it. But every time I'm there, anywhere near the freezer section, I always think of the same thing. That sound that I heard that day and that smell from the sulfur, like gunpowder. I go target shooting and hunting, and I know what gunpowder smells like, but being in that unique situation, you never get past it. You never stop thinking about it. Oh yeah, people are crazy. People running, little kids. I don't know if people could get in their car, get out. Hmm. Still at large, the news is downplaying it. At least the mayor announced the shooter is at large. That's terrible. Good morning, Gayla. Welcome this morning's page two news. Hopefully, this will actually work today. I finally got back into my streaming software, but so far, doing screen shares, it hasn't been working, and it keeps on flipping me from my name that you see. When I say hello, see, it didn't even type it that time. Hello, where it says it shows my icon for 11 now. It keeps on flipping back from that to Restream IO. And good morning, Alicia from Cincinnati, Ohio. Welcome back, Joe Burrow for the Cincinnati Bengals. Might be just in time to save their season. Excuse me. Now grab yourself a cup of hot coffee or tea or whatever you're drinking this morning. Let's get this going. This is page two news. Now with 10% more elastic threads and less cotton. This morning's show and crime recap strictly adheres to verified factual evidence. All information presented in sources of reputable agencies such as the FBI, DOJ, and whenever applicable, Interpol and Scotland Yard. We do not engage in the conspiracy theory speculations or unverified claims about what may have occurred. If you're looking for that type of content, this program will not be the right fit for you. Thank you for your understanding and have a great day. Shout out to all those that supported my channel and content last week: Stacy P, Mark J, and Mitchell. Thank you very much for your donations and merchandise purchase. I have really super appreciate it. And now for something completely different, the bizarre, strange, and even the stories you forgot about or missed. All right, first story tonight, let's see if this works, is about Jeffrey Dahmer. And it doesn't look like that's going to work. So we'll try the second way. Oop. How did Jeffrey Dahmer die? What to know about the serial killer's final moments, which mirrored one of his most gruesome crimes. More than 3 decades ago, Jeffrey Dahmer was murdered in prison in an act that struck an eerie similarity to the first person he killed years earlier. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was bludgeoned a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks to death in 1978, suffered the same fate at the hands of a fellow inmate, Christopher Scaver, while serving 16 consecutive life sentences. I have ad blocker on. I don't know why that popped up. Sorry about that. Dahmer had raped, murdered, and dismembered at least 17 boys and young men in Milwaukee, engaged in cannibalism and necrophilia with some of their bodies before getting caught in 1991. The gruesome details of Dahmer's slayings, as well as the tragic failing attempts to report his murders sooner, shocked and captivated the world when his crimes were finally discovered. He was eventually convicted of 15 murders in Wisconsin and was sentenced to 15 consecutive life terms in prison in February of 1992, with the 16th conviction and life sentence coming later. He was not convicted of one of the 17 confessed killings due to lack of evidence, though he didn't live long enough to serve much time. Here's what we know about Jeffrey Dahmer's death in prison 31 years ago. Fellow inmate Christopher Scaver beat Dahmer and a second inmate, Jesse Anderson, to death at the Columbia Correctional Institution. Scaver told the New York Post in 2015 that Dahmer would sculpt human limbs from food and use ketchup for blood, unsettling other prisoners. He kept his distance from Dahmer, who typically had a guard with him at all times because of his conflicts with other inmates. On November 28, 1994, Scaver, Anderson, and Dahmer were left unattended, unshackled to clean the gym bathroom. While Scaver was filling his mop and bucket, he claimed that one of the men poked him in the back, but he didn't know who it was. I turned around and Dahmer and Jesse were kind of laughing under their breath, Scaver recalled. I looked right into their eyes and couldn't tell which one had done it. The men then split up, and Scaver, who had reportedly kept a newspaper clipping of Dahmer's crimes in his pocket, grabbed a 20-inch, 5-pound metal bar from the gym. Scaver claimed that following Dahmer into the staff locker room and confronted him about the crimes outlined in the newspaper clipping. I asked him if he had did those things because I was fiercely disgusted, Scaver told the New York Post, adding that Dahmer was shocked. He described what happened next. He started looking for the door pretty quick. I blocked him and he ended up dead. I put his head down, Scaver said. Then he quickly went to another locker room where Anderson was working and did the same thing. Guards found Dahmer on the bathroom floor with severe head wounds from being hit with the bar and from his head being slammed into the wall. He was hospitalized and pronounced dead an hour later. Schaefer committed both murders within about 20 minutes. As for why he did it, Schaefer said his motivation went beyond Dahmer's behavior, beyond bars. He crossed the line with some people, prisoners and prison staff, Schaefer claimed. Some people who are in prison are repentant, but he was not one of them. Schaefer's murdered Dahmer on the morning of November 20th, 1994, and prison guards found him in the bathroom at 8:10 a.m., and he was pronounced dead at the hospital about an hour later. And I'm still trying to pull up the second one. And delete. It's back to me. All right. Well, that's the first one. I don't know why it deleted this. Boop, 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 boop. All of that was supposed to close, but that. Good morning, Kitiku. I just tried to blame everything on my mill. Thanks, I forgot as usual. I'm trying to open this page. It won't open that way. Okay, and then we go this way because it won't open the other way. There we go. Hopefully it doesn't play any ads this time. Utah death row inmate with dementia dies of natural causes. A Utah man who was spared execution this fall after developing dementia during his 37 years on death row. You got that right. 37 years that he spent on death row. He still had one appeal outstanding, and it could have been another 2 to 4 years before they actually heard that final appeal. But he died on Wednesday of apparent natural causes, according to the State Department of Correction. Ralph Leroy Menez died at 1:45 local time at the hospital department said. His next of kin and family of Maureen Husker, and the woman who he was discovered, he was convicted of abducting and killing in 1986, has been notified. So notified his family and the victim's family. Menez, 67, was set to die by firing squad in September, but the Utah Supreme Court blocked the impending execution in August after his attorneys argued his dementia had become too severe. A judge had scheduled a new competency hearing for mid-December to reevaluate his mental state. The Utah Department of Corrections said Wednesday it would not be releasing further details on Menez's conditions or medical information. Menez was convicted of abducting Hunsaker nearly 40 years ago from a convenience store where she worked in Salt Lake City and killing her. The body of the 26-year-old mother of three was discovered 2 days later. Menez was sentenced to death in 1988. Maureen Hunsaker was a cherished wife and mother whose life was stolen in an act of horrific violence by Ralph Menez, Utah Attorney General Derek Brown said Wednesday. For decades, the state of Utah had pursued justice on her behalf. The path has been long and filled with pain for far more than any victim's family should have ever endured. Menez should have been the seventh U.S. Prisoner executed by firing squad since 1977. He selected the method when given the choice decades ago. The Utah Supreme Court said this summer that the progression of his disease raised a significant question about his fitness to be executed at the time. Menez abducted Hunsaker from a convenience store on February 23, 1986, while he was on parole. She later called her husband to say she was robbed and kidnapped and that her abductor intended to release her. 2 days later, a hitchhiker found her body at a picnic area about 16 miles away from Big Cotton Canyon. She had been strangled and her throat had been slashed. Yes, they do, Francie, to answer your question. People in prison do get health care. They get medical, dental, vision, hearing, psychological counseling. When it comes to the U.S. prison system, the U.S. prison system at the state level, not the federal, but at the state level, is the largest provider of mental health services in the U.S. Since Ronald Reagan came into office and closed down all of the and took the funding away from state institutions for mental health, and they kicked all those people out onto the streets, we obviously saw a giant spike in the homeless rate and crimes, and it stayed at a level and then it slowly declined and it went up, and it's done this ever since. But it's never come down to where it was before they took all the funding away from mental health. But now I need to, with everybody getting medical, dental, vision, hearing, mental health, all right, in certain places, not every state prison, they may have to pay what's called a copay, just like you or me when we go to the doctor. It may be $3, it may be $10 whenever they go to see, a provider in prison. And trust me when I tell you, it is not the best services. They would much rather shove pills at someone and say this will cure you or fix you or get you by than they would on anything else. And they extremely limit the use of narcotics and certain medications like Adderall and stuff like that that are abused out on the street. It would also be abused inside of prisons. So they'll give you, anything else. Okay, you're schizophrenic. Here's your schizophrenia medication. As long as it doesn't, one of them is not, a need for Adderall. Because they won't give you it, or they may require that you come to an office, you take it in front of them, and they actually check you to make sure you actually ingested it, and they make you wait to make sure you can't cough it back up. There's all kinds of protocols out there, depending upon the state institution. You blame Nancy? I don't even blame Ronald Reagan for what he was doing. You have to look at the time when they took the funding away. I mean, we were ramping up the war machine, and like we're doing now here in America, we're ramping up that war machine. You got to cut the budget somewhere. And unfortunately, his idea about, cutting the federal spending on, inpatient subsidies for mental health, was turn it over to the states. The states should be controlling and caring for their own. That was what Ronald wanted, and he wanted that. You have 10,000 people in your state that need it. We should only give you X amount, the same as we give the other state next to them. So what a lot of states did initially when they got their cutting slashed is they did what they called one-way Greyhound. They put people on Greyhound buses and sent them off. You want to go home? You wanted to see your family, don't you? here you go, here's the ticket, and they sent them home. They did that and to try to balance down the, how much they were spending. And then when they didn't have enough to keep the operations going, they just opened the door and said goodbye. Some families came and took their mentally ill loved ones, and others didn't show up at all. And they just wandered off down onto the streets. But I understand exactly what he was trying to get at and what he was trying to accomplish. I don't blame Nancy, and I don't even blame Ronnie. Like the old saying goes, if you're waiting for the government to solve anything for you, you're going to be waiting an awfully long time. The government can't solve everything, and unfortunately, even then, back in the '80s and now, the government can't solve your problems. You're better off having your local community, like Ronald and everybody had said. Look, why don't we get that local communities to take care of them? Open up more clinics, take care of people at a ground level. It made more sense. It would be money better spent. But no, there were other things involved in it too. But Reagan took it away from our state first when he was California governor. Yeah, absolutely right, Gayla. Yeah. Besides being an actor, and then heads of the actors union and trying to break the union up, then becoming governor and stripping the state of a lot of safety nets in the state of California. People didn't look at that, and they still elected an actor as president. And obviously, as we can see from experience and history, it wasn't the first. It was the first time, but it's not going to be the last. I mean, now we have a reality TV star in the White House. So, hate him or love him, people voted for him. He became president, duly elected. They can make things worse. Oh yeah, they can. All right, let's see if we can get every time I get this thing to work, it's deleting my my other scene. It's called add scene. It's deleting it. I don't know why. We'll go back to this again, and I got to page through to the next one. Next one was about the Slender Man. I'm not going to bother to pull this up. I can just straight up, tell you. So if you don't know what the Slender Man urban myth is, the urban myth of the Slender Man, just kind of give you a brief overview of it. It's an urban myth about a man who he supposedly has mythical powers. He can control you. He can harm you. He can harm your loved ones, your friends, if you don't do what the Slender Man says. Well, this nut job, she actually stabbed her not her coworker, but her classmate, and tried to kill her for the Slender Man because she says the Slender Man wanted her to do it. Well, she went away to prison after she was caught. And this past week, she cut off her ankle bracelet where she was living in a group home, and took off. I believe she went to Chicago or Iowa. Doesn't matter. She went somewhere and she removed her ankle bracelet. Well, they caught her again. Now she's back in jail again, and she'll be facing parole violations and a bunch new crimes for removing the ankle bracelet. And she'll be going back to prison again for what she did. This time on top of it, she'll probably have to serve out the rest of the sentence that was suspended that got her out of prison in the first place. But yeah, she's definitely, there's a couple screws loose upstairs with her. Morgan Geyser, Geyser, that's her name. It's right there in the link. Morgan Geyser. Where is she now? Prison? She's actually in county lockup right now, Bonnie. She's going to go back to court, and they're going to, she's been charged with new felonies for escape from custody. That's the number one, by removing the ankle bracelets. Escape from custody. That's basically, say like she was out on work release and she took off. It'd be the same crime. But she was living in a group home setting and she cut off the ankle bracelet and absconded from custody. So she's going to face those new charges first. And then they're, on top of that, they're going to find, obviously a parole violation for her leaving. And the parole department's going to say, nope, send her back to prison. She obviously didn't learn. And I don't know how much of a suspended sentence she had at that point, but they're just going to convert it all to sentence. Will she get good time on the new charges? She can earn good time on the new charges, the escape from custody. I don't know if she's going to be eligible for good time on what she normally would have had as a suspended sentence that they're going to convert back to prison time. No. I listened to the interview with Brian E. Did with the lady that wrote a book about her. She made a lot of good points about kids being tried as adults. I can see it here that there was a shooting. It was a couple of blocks from me. I am so sorry that came so close to you, Interpeace. County lockup, probably not that bad. That group home was a joke. Neighbors didn't even know she was there. No, I have a group home that's like, it's a halfway house. I have a halfway house, not in my community, because I live in a gated community, but we're here and there is nothing for 2 miles in between us and then the edge of town. But right across the street from this 7-Eleven is the first thing that you actually see when you get into town. Right across the street from it is a halfway house. And the people who live there in that neighborhood, they never knew that it was a halfway house. I mean, there's a lot of people living there, but I mean, you'd have to be completely blind. There's only like 2 or 3 cars, and there's probably 8, maybe 10 people who live there, and they're always constantly walking. But yeah, that's a situation where they didn't have to tell them that it was a halfway house. At least in my state, unless they were a sex offender and they were there, then they would have to notify the entire area. But a parolee, you don't have to notify them, necessarily that they're living at a certain address, unless again they're a sex offender. At least in my state. So, and it wouldn't necessarily qualify, at that halfway house group home that she was in, unless there was a sex offender or a violent offender in that household. They probably wouldn't have to tell anybody by state law. And there's some goods to that, and you can play the devil's advocate on both sides of that. Parolees already, the entire system is stacked against them from the moment that they're released from prison. And you may not be aware of this, but if you're a convicted felon, and I wouldn't say every state, but I would say there's probably 1 or 2 states out there that don't do this, but all the other 50 states do. All right, 46 states, whatever, somewhere in there, do this. If you're a convicted felon and you get released from prison, you have so many hours after you're actually released to go report in initially to see your parole officer. It may be the same day. It may be the next day by 10 a.m., depending upon what time you're actually released. And you can't drink alcohol or do drugs or anything in between the time you're released and the time that you actually go see them. Then they check in to make sure where you're actually living. They give you certain restrictions on where you can go, where you can be, what time you have a curfew. You have to be home. You have to be able to answer. Maybe you have an ankle monitor like this nut job did. And then there are the restrictions, and the requirements like you must get a job, gainful employment, and everywhere you go, you have to put down that you're a convicted felon. And then people see that on applications and they just don't even bother. Some places do say that they will hire felons, and the vast majority of them, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, found that even they discriminate against people who they say that they will hire. Oh, you're a convicted felon. Well, we certainly don't want you, if you've been convicted of embezzlement, we don't want you working the cash register. So, yeah, even though they say that they have a position open for as a cashier, they're not going to hire you to do that. And then there is where are you going to live? You can't live with someone who's on HUD, Section 8, because if you're on HUD or Section 8 and you can't be on the lease, you can't live there legally, they can kick you out, and they can kick out whoever the actual lease or rental agreement is with. So now you can't get a job. You can't find a place to live. Where are you going to go? Now, that felony is on your record unless you can get it expunged. And the whole system is stacked against them. I'm not even going to get into the barriers for getting federal financial aid, going to a trade school or anything else to better your life. That's why they keep the system going. It's a revolving door. They let you out, they bring you back in. They let you out, they bring you back in. And that's why the recidivism rate in so many states is so high. But yeah, we could go on forever about that. They committed adult crimes. They're a danger to the community, but I think it's state by state. It is in a large part, and it could be state by state or city or county by county. I always wondered how they tried kids as adults. I mean, they're kids, right? Yes, but sometimes the crimes are horrific. They charge them as an adult. They say like I'll give you an example. All right. Let's say that the individual is 14 years old and they committed a school shooting and they shot up the school and they killed, say, 10 of their classmates. All right. They charge them as an adult crime, even though they mentally and medically are not an adult yet. What they do is they send them to a juvenile facility from the age of 14 to 18. So 4 years that they'll spend in that juvenile system, and then they send them to an adult prison. As opposed to if they charge them as a juvenile, and in that scenario, they have to keep them in the juvenile facility for the 4 years, and then find another setting that is not a prison, with hardened criminals, after that to send them to. Maybe it has to be a work camp, for the next 40 years where they'll go there. They have to find some place to send them if they charge them as a juvenile in that situation. It's a lot easier, and a lot of states and a lot of prosecutors would much rather charge you, the juvenile with an adult crime and convict you as an adult in that circumstance than they would want to juvenile and then have to later on in 4 years, 6 years find someplace else for them to go. Let's just send you here until you're an adult and then send you here. Because obviously they can't take that 14-year-old and drop them in the middle of Sing Sing Penitentiary. They'd be preyed on immediately by everyone if they did that. So they have to wait until they're probably going to get preyed on anyways when they're 18, but at least there's a chance by then, they'll be an adult, be able to make, and defend themselves at that point is what they're thinking of. But that's a nutshell, an example of why they would do it. But yeah, if they commit adult crimes, they deserve to face adult circumstances for it. But they don't know right from wrong. We know that particularly with males, the frontal lobe, part of the brain, making right and wrong decisions, is not developed until the 20s. I think it's 2022-ish, somewhere in there. But at 18, we can send you to war and you can die for this country, but you can't legally buy a beer. So I'm not going to bring this one up either because I'm just going to call it there and then we'll just chat. But in case you guys have purchased a bike helmet at Walmart, there is a nationwide recall on bike helmets from Walmart that are sold underneath the High Sierra name. It doesn't matter which one you have. If you bought one of them that are similar shaped like these here that you see on the screen in the recall notice, take it back to Walmart and it doesn't matter if it's used, scraped up, or whatever condition it might be in. If it's shaped like one of those, take it back to Walmart and they will give you either a refund or exchange it for one that is not on the recall list. Additionally, there's another national recall for propane cooking stoves that that not something that you would use as camping, but more of a backpackers propane tank burner setup. It's a small compact unit that you would put in a backpack if you're hiking through the mountains of the Ozarks or the Cascades or someplace. But there's a recall on that where it can become unstable and one of the pieces can break and you can lose your stuff and it can start a fire. But if you have either one of those two items, and there are like 5 different names that the propane heating unit is sold underneath. Just take them back to Walmart. But that's it for the other ones. I wanted to get the stupid thing to work. It's almost working, almost. But I'm counting this all as a win. One, I'm back into my streaming software. Yesterday, I had to use StreamYard for the first time in like 5 years. Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, that didn't exactly work 100% the way it was. That's why I hated using them and I left them years ago. But I'm back into my streaming software. It may, you're seeing me on YouTube right now. I am only streaming to YouTube. I'm not streaming to Facebook, X, Twitch, or Facebook. I'm not streaming to anybody else, just YouTube. Something is wrong with my live chats. Is it the same thing that Bonnie was seeing yesterday, Gayla, where everything disappeared? Well, I think Bonnie yesterday had that issue, but she logged out and logged back in, then it worked. Rykart! Good morning, Rykart. I hope you are doing well and staying safe out there. Bonnie can only see her comments yesterday. I already logged out and back in. And did it not fix it? Oh, I'm sorry. In beautiful Nevada. My grandmother lived in McLaughlin. McLaughlin. She lived there for 40 years. She lived in McLaughlin. I always wanted to go to Las Vegas and go see the mole people. Stay away from my neighborhood. Oh, shooter on the loose, says Inner Peace. Well, yeah, safe right now if you're Nevada. But y'all know, you ever seen the documentaries on the mole people? That's what they call them, the mole, like a ground mole. They call them the mole people. They actually live in the storm rainwater system underneath Las Vegas. Well, I can see you, Gayla. I hopefully it's a simple fix. It's the internet. No guarantees though. Oh, by the way, in case you all haven't seen this morning, I posted on the community tab here on YouTube a video from Zoidzilla or CoffeeZilla. I've always known him as CoffeeZilla, where he goes over the extensive delays and how much of a pain in the ass it is for them and for everyone else is seeing the same issue when it comes to filing and getting documents from the government underneath the Freedom of Information Act request, a FOIA request. I highly suggest everyone go to my community tab after this and click on that video and watch the video, and you'll understand exactly what I've been trying to express for so long. Now, over the last couple of years, almost 3 years in particular, I have expressed just how much of a pain in the ass it is, for me to file FOIA requests, and I'm constantly being told either no, or they send me only part of the documents, or they like to play games when filing and fulfilling a Freedom of Information Act request. These are documents that belong to each and every one of us. We should all have the rights to request these documents and receive them in a timely manner. But go watch that again. Go to my community tab. It's right on the top, and you'll see exactly what I've been talking about. He puts it so much so much better than I can ever say it. I've been bitching and moaning about the FOIA request for almost 3 years now, and he boiled it down into a simple and it shows you right there on screen why how long they're telling him it's going to take if he wants to all the documents, some of the documents, a tiny bit of the documents, one video file. It's maddening, and it's going to get so much worse than it already is right now. He's trying to get just documents on the Epstein file, but this goes across the board for anything that anyone requests underneath the Freedom of Information Act. Myself, I'm at 2 years and 1 week is how much longer I'm waiting to receive the information about an inmate that was pardoned by Obama. I'm trying to get those documents. Not Trump, not Biden, Obama. One individual who was pardoned by Obama. I'm trying to get the information about. I've got 2 years plus wait right now still before I will get those documents. I keep on hoping I'll get open my email and I'll see that hey they fulfilled it sooner, but I have no hope. And then to make things even worse, underneath Doge with Elon Musk, they decided to, hey, there are too many people who are working in this department without knowing what they do, and if they did know what they were doing, they certainly the F didn't care. They slashed their budget by the amount, how much budget they were getting per year, and said, then the department said, well, we don't have enough people to right now, but with that budget, we don't have enough to keep half of these people. So they decreased the amount of people who were fulfilling Freedom of Information Act requests, and the Freedom of Information Act request went from 3 years to 8 years because they're so backlogged the way it is already. They're like, no, we can't get to it. But hey, you know what? If you want those documents about something that the public information from what Trump did last week, in 8 years from now, you can have them. What? But you got to go watch that. Never trust Elon Musk. He wants to cure autism. I will never trust him. I wouldn't trust Elon with anything. I mean, he's done a great thing with SpaceX. I think his Cybertruck is stupid and looking as hell. I don't care if it's functional for some things. I still think it looks stupid. I don't think his electric cars are all that great, when it comes to the quality of the build, the length and range of their batteries. And I've known several people who bought them and all returned them within a year, 2 years before, and got into something else. But it's not me. I mean, I don't trust them on that grounds. That, and I don't trust anybody or like anyone who doesn't even have the time in their life to go see all the children that they have, fathered. And he's got 2 children that he's never even seen once. He hasn't seen them since the day they were born. Hasn't seen them not once since then. He doesn't care to, because he just keeps on having more and more children with other women. Yeah. Doesn't matter to him. Francie is boycotting Las Vegas. No, he's not an American, but he was appointed as underneath a special council or something like that, investigator. He could only have the job for a certain period of time, and then he would have to go through congressional hearings to be permanently appointed. And he says he quit because it was taking his time away from his businesses. No, the truth is he only had about 2 more weeks beforehand, and then he was going to be forced out of the position he was at with Doge. He knew that. Trump knew that. Everyone freaking knew that. He didn't want to go through that because he'd have to do a background check, and they would dig into every aspect of his life. He wasn't going to have that. No way in hell. But that is true. Reichardt, he's not even American. Elon's ex-wife told her if she were to his employee, he would have fired her. I'd say, honey, if that's a promise or a threat. Damn musketeer. Look, I don't know anybody who's alive or awake, who has the ability to comprehend, right from wrong, that doesn't believe that there's a lot of waste when it comes to the US government. We know that. I think the overall mission, and what he says he was trying to accomplish with Doge is a good thing. An awful lot of waste out there. When you have, a $35 hammer or a $10,000 toilet seat, where you're obviously wasting money on shit. When you're building a jet fighter for the Air Force that costs $3 billion a piece, that the Air Force neither wants, asks for, or will be able to use anytime in the next 15 years after it's actually made, why would you build it? Because it keeps the machine running. It keeps people employed at those defense contractors. It keeps the money and the kickbacks going. That's why. I mean, why would you spend $37 on a hammer when you go down to Lowe's hardware store, and get one for $4? right? I mean, and that's with Lowe's, or Ace Hardware's markup on top of it to make it $4. They're making money on it. So that if you bought directly from the manufacturer for that hammer, you could probably get it for $1.50. But they don't. $10,000 toilet seat. What did you have to test to see if it would actually work? Up, down, up, down. Yep, it works. Did you have to spend $10,000 to do that? It wasn't a toilet seat for the space shuttle or for the some zero gravity place at the space station, because they don't have toilet seats. And why do we have to spend $10,000 on a toilet seat? Or here's another example. Why did you have to spend, $14 billion redesigning the camo pattern on United States Army, uniforms, when you knew that the fatigues, the colors, the camouflage that you had back in the 1970s would work better for where future conflicts are most likely to occur? Why would you need it? That was just for the design, not for the manufacturing, just the design. To see if it would work better, if it would be harder to spot. Billions. That's the U.S. government for you. Once you turn on that spigot of free money, they're never going to turn it off, and they're certainly never going to close it up and turn it down so it's not as large. They're just going to keep on reaching into your pocket and pulling more and more and more money out. Including Orange Monster, only get into politics to get even more wealthier. Yeah. Good morning, Mike Stevens. And Trump doesn't want to feed the poor. No. That's fucking cruel. What makes the denial of payment of SNAP benefits even worse, out of all of it. Not only are you not taking care of the poor, but millions of veterans, people who fought to defend this country in war, are on SNAP benefits. They don't get enough pension to survive, any other way, or feed themselves or take care of themselves. They rely upon those SNAP benefits, and we denied it to them. We denied it to the most vulnerable portion of our society, the young and the old. And they said, just not going to do it. The government's closed. My name is, Mike Johnson. I'm going on vacation permanently, so we can't vote to open the government, because we don't like what they have to say over there on that side of the aisle. Dad was a dialysis patient for 13 years. I thank God I can do that without being on a machine. Ooh. I'm lucky I can go to the toilet. Oh, you whatever you do, you never want to go down the grifting rabbit hole of just how much money that Trump and his administration has made since he got reelected to the White House. And I know people are going to say, they're going to look at everything that I would say on that, and they're going to go, "You're definitely against him. What? Damn you! I'm turning you off. I'm going to unsubscribe," or whatever. I don't fucking care anymore. What people have to say about me, because it's not true. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm not an independent. I have no party affiliation at all. But you should really look into, if you really want to go down that rabbit hole, just look at how many billions of dollars the grifting of the cryptocurrency has netted the Trump family. Yeah. Just the cryptocurrency. Not anything else, not anywhere. And where he's suing the Department of Justice for 230 million, and he's the one who gets to sign off on it, and they just hand him the check. No, or NBC just caving and giving him millions of dollars. No, or any of the other lawsuits that he's suing people for defamation, or slander. No, don't look at any of the rest of that, or the shady deals he's made for oil, with Qatar for a free plane. No, don't look into those. Just look at the cryptocurrency. The amount of money that has been funneled through that cryptocurrency directly into his and his family's pockets since he became president. And you will absolutely be fucking flabbergasted because the crypto coin, the Trump coin, is worthless. There's nothing to it at all. Crypto itself is only value. Its only value is what people put in it. They say it's worth $1. It's worth $1. There's nothing backing any cryptocurrency. Bitcoin to your meme coins, it's all based on, what you say it's worth and how much you can trade it with somebody else for. But all the money that has come into the Trump meme coin is going right back out the back door. They have nothing on their ledgers at all. It's all been funneled right back out the back door to the Trumps. And it's shocking. Because he didn't just pick that that crypto scammer out of the blue, out of thin air to pardon and get out of prison. There's a reason behind it. So you'll go down a rabbit hole and you won't like what you read. And if you have an open mind and the ability to comprehend what's really going on there, you would be surprised. Now, I don't care what political side you're from, you'd be like, holy shit, that was a great idea, you're going to say, if you're on one side of the aisle. Now, the other side of the aisle, you're going to go, holy fuck, what in the hell happened to this country? When something like that can happen, and mainstream media is afraid to even report on it because that's what he wants. He wants each and every mainstream media to not cover it or be afraid to say anything against him that is wrong. When you go after comedians like Jimmy Kimmel and try to shut them up because they tell jokes about you, there's, you're hiding something. But when you read about it, you'd be surprised. Very surprised. And if you're not surprised, you're part of the most likely part of the problem. It's even worse. Poor kids have the right to eat what they please. Being poor isn't a crime. Poor kids have the right to eat what they please. I don't know anybody who's poor and is on SNAP that has the ability to pick and choose, and kids can eat whatever they want, Mike. I don't know of anybody on SNAP programs like that. They're not eating high off the hog. I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there that are abusing the program, but those who who receive SNAP benefits, it's just a supplement to help them get by. Reichardt's been a trucker for 15 years. God bless the truckers of America. Because without it, you guys wouldn't have shit in your stores to purchase. I don't care where it comes from. I don't care if it was made and manufactured on a cornfield in Iowa. Somewhere along the line, a trucker had to pick that up and take it to a warehouse. Somewhere along the line, if it came in through a port, it came in and they put it on a truck to get it to the warehouse, and then from the warehouse to the store. You all are letting the world pay them peanuts for something. It's like if tomorrow afternoon, if the electricity in your home was being they said to all you electrical line workers out there, we're gonna cut your your monthly salary we may pay you on time also, and we may do, some other shady shit like, make you show up and wait 8 hours before you actually get to work. But yeah, you got to be there. If we did that to the electrical line workers of America who bring electricity into our homes, we wouldn't have electricity. Well, let's start with that. But we allow that shit to happen to truckers every day, every day. And then we wonder what if they go on strike. What's the first thing that happens? The president says either get back to work or I'm going to make sure you're all fired and you'll never work in this field again. Just like air traffic controllers. I agree with not allowing SNAP recipients to buy junk food with SNAP. And good morning, Callie Lisa. Uh, it leads to poorer health and taxpayers and us paying for that as well. Hmm. When I was low income, says Gayla, and a single parent, I had a full time job and got a second job to feed my kids. Just saying. Yeah, but thank you, though, Gayla. I mean, we've all struggled, at some point. I mean, when me and my wife first got married, we didn't have two nickels to rub together. Living paycheck to paycheck was, yeah, that was a dream that we had a hope to someday accomplish. But there are people out there that have a lot of roadblocks in front of them. Maybe they can't work two jobs. Maybe they have a child with with health issues and it's not possible. They can barely work the one job. Where SNAP benefits and state assistance is at a lifeline. And then we shut it down over people arguing the government down. It definitely makes it harder for them. Or impossible for them to survive. And then, don't forget, before they shut the government down, they took $500 million away from food banks across the United States. 500 million. Why? I don't know, because they hate the poor. Now, when it comes to people, making poor decisions with SNAP benefits, like Callie Lisa was talking about, and buying junk food, I know people who are not on not on SNAP benefits, Callie, at least, and I'm sure you do as well, who buy some of the worst food that is out there. And that's just the way the society has gone. We're all brainwashed into believing, that there's some kind of nutritional value from McDonald's Happy Meal, or, for the same amount of money that you spend on that McDonald's Happy Meal, you can make it at home for a fraction of the money. But it's convenience. Junk food, people, your brain is wired to want that fat and that salt content, and they know that. That's why they put salt, so much sodium and sugar, in everything. Why is there high fruit syrup, corn syrup in everything? You'd be surprised. Shit, you wouldn't even think it is. Why did they put it in beef sticks? Jerkies. Why is it in jerky? You don't need to put fructose corn syrup, in jerky, but we do because the brain, and the taste buds are connected, and it tells your system, this is good. I want more, and it tricks you. But for when it comes to food benefits and people buying junk food, I don't think they should either. Neither do I think that people who are not on SNAP, I don't think they should be buying that stuff either. It's awful. But people buy it anyways. Now, state assistance should only be a temporary thing. In my state, generations of families live this way and are perfectly able to work. Gayla, with the reply to your comment, me and my wife know a family. They are a 7 generations, 7, not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, but 7 generations have all been on welfare and SNAP and every type of benefit out there. 7 generations. At one point, they had 4 generations living in the same household, and they all were receiving benefits as if they were the head of a single household, abusing the system because there are all these people living there and bringing in the same welfare, the same benefits, everything. It has been now 3 generations since any of them have had a job. They're all perfectly able to work, and none of them work at all. It's disgusting. What's my point, Will? My point on which one, Interpeas? About people who are on WIC, welfare? For what I just said, but my point is there, yeah, generations of people who have been abusing the system. They're far and in between, but there are ones that are out there that are like that. Forget that smoke. Now, you see, Gemma, you're a completely different situation, sweetheart, where you actually have what is, definitely a barrier to employment. You have a barrier, and you should receive benefits. I'm not talking about the people out there who have an ailment or a barrier. My heart goes out to them already, and they should receive the benefits. If they need it temporarily or for a lifetime, they should receive it. But when you see the people out there who are willing, I mean, not willing, but are able to work, who choose not to work, and generation after generation after generation, they just keep on sucking on the tit of society, because they can. I mean, it's disgusting. The 7 generations on welfare, my point is they're abusing the system. Yeah, my point is, Interpeas, they're very far and in between, but I know somebody, we know a family that is like that are abusing it, and those are the ones that they always call out, and they call them welfare queens, or whatever. They use some kind of derogatory point to roll them out, and this is who's using your system. That's, I mean, 0.001% of the entire system is being abused by people like that, but they're out there. That's my point. Provide for yourself and not to lean on anyone. Else, for support, assistance should be for the disabled or temporary help to the feed and house people. Yeah, but there are people out there, though, at the same time, like you said, those who are disabled who need the assistance. But I mean, let's look at our veterans again. On those who statistically, you break it down, we're talking, I think it was like 13 million veterans who are on SNAP benefit program. 13 million across the United States. And every time that something, the people come up with, like, we want to reform, the SNAP benefits and welfare program, and we're going to make sure that these, in order to be eligible, you must be able to work, and you have to work so many hours, and you add all these, restrictions in place. All it does is kick people off the rolls, even if they can't work. And then there's people like the family we know. They find ways around it. There's always loopholes. I don't judge anyone. You won't understand it until you are there in their shoes. Anyone can end up with nothing in a snap of a finger. That is absolutely true, right, Cart? That is absolutely true. Here, today you've got security. Tomorrow it could all be gone. Very true. And then come back from nothing. That's hard. Same thing can be said for our health and loved ones in our lives. None of us are guaranteed a tomorrow. Today we have security. Today we have the roof over our heads and a job or whatever it might be. We have food on the table. Tomorrow you can get sick and then find out that you have terminal cancer, or you don't even find out about it and you drop dead at your in your living room, or fat, stoned, and lazy like Elvis on the bowl. You never know. Never know. You're never not guaranteed it tomorrow. Your cousin is on Snap, and I saw her at the grocery store, and she paid for my lunch. Huh. You still get targeted by people saying, "Jimmy, you should work. You are verbal," and such is not like I've not been trying to work, but my mental health and autism make it impossible for me to work. Again, those the social welfare systems like that in America. I know you're not in America, sweetheart, but those social welfare programs, as people like to call them, those are the thing. You're the person who deserves it and should have that that safety net. It's true. You never should apologize for it. True. And that family, we sit back and we love them all. They're great people, but we wonder, and when we were struggling, me and my wife after we first got married, I mean, hoping, praying to someday, and I'm not when I say hoping and praying to someday make it to the point where um, we could live paycheck to paycheck. That was a dream in the future to us. We didn't have two nickels to rub together. I mean, we would everything that we had went to just covering just like rent and basic necessities. Thank God we didn't have any kids at that time. But we knew the one thing that was going to save us and get us out of that hole was an education. And we did everything that we could to make sure that we got an education, and we bettered ourselves to get out of where we were. But we finally made it out of that situation. Life got better for us. It got me to the point where I'm able to do this. Never give up. But that family, we love them all. They're great people. They just they won't do anything. And we know they won't. Never be ashamed of where you are. Just try to better life if you can, if it all possible. Never be ashamed. I've been down. I've been broke. I've lost things in my life, but I found a way. Kept on striving to have more and more shit. Now I've got a lot of shit, and I don't want it. I mean, back then when me and my wife first got married, we had one car between the two of us that barely ran. If it wasn't for my ability and understanding and how to fix, and repair cars, as a side hustle, doing whatever the hell I could, not only for ourselves, but, keeping the, other people's cars running for exchange for a little, little side cash. I don't think we ever would have made it. I don't think we ever would have. And then we had everything. We got out of that situation. We bettered our lives, our degrees. We started, everything was looking up. We just bought our first home. That day that at the closing table, when they handed us the keys and they said, "This is yours," the overwhelming, feeling of security and joy. I mean, it was just a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 1,125 square foot home, small house, but it was perfect for us because we didn't have any kids at the time. And then 6 months later, after that, everything started to fall apart again because I was diagnosed with cancer. But we got through that as well. Tomorrow, something else could happen. You never know. You never do know. And we never used assistance, It was funny because we actually applied for assistance with daycare after my daughter was first born. This is like after my wife got sick. They told us no. We made too much money. We didn't have much, but we had a little. But they said, nope, you have too much. You have to sell off a vehicle or two. You need to, reduce your total what you have. Otherwise, we can't help you with daycare. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I feel sorry for anybody who's got a child now for where daycare costs have gone. It's up there. You'd love to see the wedding pictures of me and Crystal. Well, so would I, right, Cart? But we don't have any. We don't have any wedding photos. Never had it done. I know the guy that put a gas pump handle in his mouth and pulled the handle just so he couldn't get a disability check for life, and it worked. There obviously, Kitty Q, there was something obviously wrong with him if he got to the point where he did something like that before leading up to putting a gas nozzle in his mouth and pulling the trigger. Because there's that guy that was on that show, My Strange Addiction. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that show, but yeah, there's a guy on there who drank gasoline every day. He had jugs and jugs of gasoline. I'm watching the show, and this is messed up for me. I'm watching it, and it's about this strange addiction, and this guy's got like 15, plastic jugs of gasoline all over his house in little jars with gasoline in it. And I'm thinking to myself, not that this guy has an addiction to gasoline. I'm thinking, my God, I hope there's never a spark in that house. The whole place would go up. Come on, old pics of you guys. Well, I've got old pictures of us around that time, but we never paid for a wedding photographer. Didn't pay for it. Which is kind of funny at the same time when you think about photography. In our living room, we've probably got 90 pictures of different stages of my daughter's life growing up, toddler, first grade, and so on through her life growing up. Because we used to go to Sears and J.C. Penney's photography studio. It was dirt cheap back then, but they're gone. There isn't a lot of places now that do in studio photography anymore. So now with my son, who's 9, we've got obviously his baby picture when he was in NICU because he was a preemie. We've got that picture along with his bracelet and stuff like that in the shadow box. And then we have like the first like 2 years, of him, in life, and then we have like first, his kindergarten picture from school, and then we get the ones from school every year now that are framed, but nowhere near as many as we do of my daughter growing up. Miss the photography studios like J.C. Penney's and Sears Photography Studio. Those were the bombs. They're all gone now. Olin Mills. That show is crazy. My Strange Addiction. They had that guy who was in love with his car, who had sex with his car every day, or the lady who ate hair. He liked pain pills. But back to the photography, though, when we got married, there were things that we didn't have a lot of money. We were footing the bill ourselves. Her dad was still working for the Oregon Department of Corrections at the time, and he's a genuine tight ass. He wasn't going to help us. And her mom didn't have any money, and well, my mom was worthless. She never saved 2 nickels in her life at all. So we had to foot the bill for our wedding, and we decided that we wanted to spend the money instead of photography. We didn't have bachelor party, we didn't have a bachelorette party, neither one of those. We decided we put all the money towards the venue, flowers, and then the reception. That was what we decided to spend our money on. There are probably some people who took photos. We've never gone around and said, "Hey, did you ever take any photos?" I mean, this is 30 plus years ago now, so husband's ashes. Indoor malls. We still have a mall here, but it is freaky weird. I mean, compared to when I was a teenager and I went into the place, I mean, it was a bustling center. There were kids hanging out, and there was arcades, there was a food court, there was all kinds of businesses in the mall. Now it's like a freaking ghost town. There's a food court still, but there's like 2 vendors there total. Sabaro's Pizza and hot dog on a stick. That's the only thing that's in the food court now. There used to be like 12 vendors in the food court in our local mall here. Half the stores are closed, or if they are open, they're like liquidation stores now. What do they call them? Factory outlet stores. I think that's what it's like. Last year's in shit, clothing and stuff like that. I mean, it's bad in the mall when even GameStop, had to close up their store in the mall. I mean, they have another store. We still have a GameStop here. It's 2 towns away, but we still have a GameStop here, an actual store. Because now they're into like they trade and buy and sell Pokemon and Magic the Gathering, video games still. You can get instant downloads and all kinds of shit in their stores now, but it's completely different from the old GameStop. You can still buy physical, media there, discs and stuff of your favorite, Xbox games and stuff like that. But they sell a lot more than just games now. But it's still called GameStop. Oh my God, off topic, but I just read this headline. Kim Kardashian brain scan result shows low brain activity. Well, she says she's going to keep on with her desire to get her law degree, just because she didn't pass the bar. A couple months ago or a month ago, she didn't pass it, the bar exam. She's going to keep on doing it. And statistically, I make fun of her because she is a Kardashian after all. But A vast majority, I think it said something like 37% of all the people who take the bar exam don't pass the first time. And then there's an addition of that who go back and take the bar exam. They 3 times before they pass it. So, and a lot of people just give up and say, "Screw it, I'll be a law clerk, or I'll be something else in the field instead, or go into another field altogether." But just those, I mean, they only track the percentages of those who actually stay and continue to get it. I had a girlfriend that worked at a corn dog on a stick when I was a teenager, right? But the one in the mall I have here, Ricart, they still wear those stupid uniforms. The red, yellow, and white hats and shirts and everything else, just like they did in the 1970s. I mean, I don't know. You have to be pretty desperate to take a job working there. There's only like maybe 30 people there on a Saturday afternoon in the entire mall. I mean, how many corn dogs or hot dogs on a stick can they sell? But they're still there. Them and Sbarro's Pizza. That's the only. They're a bookends. Sbarro's on one end, and the hot dog on a stick is on the other. It ain't nothing like it used to be when I went there when I was a teenager. It was the place to go, hang out. It was indoors. It was air conditioned. And you got to think about that. It's called a high desert plateau, and indoors, and all kinds of other teenagers and fashions and music. I mean, we had a Tower Records in the mall back then, so you could go to the Tower Records. We had a KB toy store right across from it. The mall was a booming place back then. Not anymore. You had a friend who worked at Claire's Boutique. I think they had a Claire's Boutique at one point just down the because our mall is like a giant T. So bookend on each end. So it used to be Sears on one end, J.C. Penney is on the other end, bookend that way. And then down on the other end was the Bond Marché, which then later became Macy's. But the Bond Marché. That was our mall. And then there are stores in between the T and the food courts in the middle where the T comes together for the whole mall. But I think there was a Claire's Boutique down by J.C. Penney's. Because there was a smoke shop there too. You could smoke in the mall back then. This was the 70s. So I worked at Richmond Brothers men's suit store in the mall. That's cool. Orange Julius. We had an Orange Julius. Back when Orange Julius, you could get a raw egg put into your orange juice or your smoothie or your strawberry or orange drink. They would put you could get raw egg put right into your thing, and they'd blend it up for you. Malls were cool back then. Yeah, they certainly were. They were a place to hang out, especially in a place like this. Well, Rycart's been through here. There ain't. I mean, there's a lot more here now than there was back in the 70s and 80s. Back then. But Rycart's been through here on the freeway system. Probably I-5 or 240 or both. My high school boyfriend worked at a shoe store in the mall. Dang, I still love shoes. As long as you're not like a Mel DeMarcos love shoes. Good old Imelda Marcos. Her husband, Ferdinand Marcos, was in charge, president of the Philippines when they exiled them and kicked them out of the Philippines. She had, 30,000 pairs of shoes? Why are malls not popular anymore? High rent? No. Online shopping. The retailers like Amazon, where you can get it, delivered right to your door, Why go out and buy it anywhere else? But I would go back even before then. eBay, other Shop Jeeves. Anybody remember Jeeves? But it's Shop Jeeves, eBay. Then Amazon came in, first selling just books and books only. Then they expanded to what they called Z shops. That's when I started selling on Amazon, when they had Z shops. And you could buy anything and everything. And now look at society today. Everything that you want. You can buy everything to build your next AR-15 online, to buying the next wardrobe that you need for that special event, and you'll have it all delivered to your door in a couple of days. That's why malls are dead. Rent, there's always the overhead. If they just can't, turn and flip the stuff, just like, why are bookstores dead? Barnes and Nobles, stores, and Walden Books, and Hastings bookstores. Why are they all gone? You just can't survive in an online world where everything is gone digital. It's here today, disposable tomorrow. But I'm sure rent definitely plays into it. Well, sorry, Rickard, but my point was that I know you've been through here before. Probably on one of the highways there. Has anyone seen the Whatnot app? Yeah, I've seen the Whatnot app. It's crazy. It is. There's a lot of apps like that, though. Calisa, Whatnot, a lot of apps like that. But again, that's what did in the malls. And a lot of places like the strip malls and stuff like that of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, those strip malls are being bulldozed, and turned into, houses, apartments. They're just going away. Society changes. Sometimes it's for the better and sometimes it's not. You still want to sit on Santa's lap? I can't even tell you the last time a mall Santa for like Christmas. They don't even do that here anymore. When it comes to Santa, I'm not joking. If you want to get a picture with your kid and Santa Claus, a local nursery, like plant nursery, that is here. They're called Beaver Bark. Beaver Bark Nursery does an entire holiday themed event where they have Santa comes in, with the actual real reindeer pulling a sled that's on wheels because there's no snow. But and you can have your picture taken with Santa and your little kid. But they don't even do it in the mall here anymore. That's gone. But with the online, you have your Amazon, you got your Temu, you have your Shein, Shein, Shein. You have all these apps where everybody can buy stuff online. You take your doggy to PetSmart and have her picture taken with Santa. Oh, that's so cute. I'm sure our PetSmart does something like that as well. We've got a PetSmart and we have a Petco, and they're both not in my town, but they're a town over from me. PetSmart and Petco. We also have a mobile dog grooming and veterinarian service. She does something every year for the holidays. My postal man dresses up like either the Grinch or Santa Claus when he delivers the mail. That's cute. He's a tall, lanky dude. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap up this morning's page 2 news there. Hopefully next week I can get more of the this to work with the sharing of my screen with this stuff. But I'm just glad I got into my editing, and streaming software, and need that desperately to work, because that's a large portion of what I do. But I want to thank everyone for stopping in this morning. If you would, give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you're watching this afterwards, leave me a comment. Give it a thumbs up as well. In the meantime, everyone, I will see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow for trivia. Again, we are doing trivia on Robert Lee Yates. This is a viewer suggested. This is the third time I've covered Robert Lee Yates, and all of the questions on tomorrow night's trivia are different. I made sure, compared them to the other 2 nights of trivia on Robert Lee Yates, that these questions have never been asked before. But Robert Lee Yates, the serial killer from Spokane, Washington, known as the Spokane Killer or the Grocery Bag Killer. But that is tomorrow night's trivia, Robert Lee Yates. In the meantime, I hope each and every one of you has a terrific day, and you stay safe out there. And remember, as Purple always points out, you never know who's going to be standing next to you next, and you never know who's going to be knocking at your door. Bye.